put on electric. So
can we all please be seated? The Conservative Group have an amendment to the Cabinet budget proposal and the Council tax resolution, and these are on the blue sheets. Councillor Moore, will you be moving the amendment?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Are you ready?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll do it now. I'm not sure that I'll be displaying all the razzmatazz from the two last speakers, but nevertheless. Before I present this budget amendment, I'd first like to thank the finance team, and particularly Jackie Wildy, our City Treasurer, for her guidance, assistance and patience. She's a true professional and a great friend to this council. To Councillor Rawlinson, Martin, I think that you do probably have the most unenviable job in the Cabinet, and we all know that even after setting this budget today, there'll still be more work to do. And let me make something absolutely clear. I do not think that the task before us in setting a budget is an easy one. But if members want to negate their responsibility and play the blame game, as they have done, then let's do it. But this sheer indulgence to make some members feel better about themselves will do nothing to benefit the people we represent. Most hard-working people expect the council to do what's right by them. And on this side of the chamber, we appreciate and understand that. The imposition of a £30 charge to collect the green waste bin is nothing more than a stealth tax, and would be the equivalent of over 12% increase on the council tax on abandoned property. This is unfair, unnecessary and downright wrong. If there's one thing a council is expected to do, it is to be able to collect the bins regardless of what's inside as part of the council tax. So, Mr. Mayor, we would axe that tax. It is important that we get the best deal for council taxpayers. Many councils use the private sector for their waste collection services, and as we believe significant savings can be made by doing this, we must do it. Recently, neighbouring Wyaborough Council, I know a favourite of the leaders, saved £1.2 million, and although our estimate is not as high as this, at £300,000, it still represents a significant saving, which we have a duty to make, and this should be done sooner rather than later. Whilst we look at the ways to make savings, it will come as no surprise that we would reduce those elements of the council that could be made more effective and more efficient, starting with the number of elections which we hold. There is no convincing argument that can be made for elections in thirds, and people who live in authorities that have all-out elections do not believe that it is undemocratic, and neither would they in Preston. It is a luxury we can no longer afford. Although this would result in a cost of £6,000 in 2019-20, it would result in savings every alternate year from 2020 to 2021. And combined with a reduction in councillors from 57 to 40, these savings would amount to almost £500,000 over the 4-year period starting in 2020-2021. It is unfair that politicians should be unaffected by difficult decisions, and he who wields the axe should face the greatest cut. We also believe that the Cabinet could be reduced by one member, and the Audit Standards Committee could be merged, which would save a further £9,000. Although this council is not a business, it does not mean we can not be more business-like. And the utilisation of our assets to reduce costs is both a practical and a proven step. The Harris Museum is a real jewel in our crown, and we can maximise its use to ensure its survival. Quite apart from the work that is already happening, we believe that we have to make the use right now, and we believe it would bring in an additional £12,000 to the council to enable us to reduce its running costs of carrying out receptions and celebrations. The commercial basis is further enhanced by a feature in the latest Live Preston and Fowl magazine, where it says the Grade 1 listed Harris Museum and Art Gallery in Preston is perfect for that intimate celebration This stunning building is spectacular inside and out and will provide an impressive backdrop for your photographs. Not just for photographs, for functions we can charge for as well. This should be something that this council is committed to as a commercial enterprise which we will benefit from. I've always made the case to ensure that we can do all we can as a council to promote business. Although we do not know the full details of the future funding arrangements for local government, it is clear that business rates will be a significant factor in that funding. To ensure that we maximise this business must be very brought into the very fabric of our working. We will set up a business enterprise and development committee to ensure that business in the city are able to thrive, ensuring financial security for our council services. Again, I reiterate my appreciation of how difficult things are for this council, but some of what I propose should have been done a long time ago. But we can't change the past, although some members appear happy to dwell on it. We believe in a better future for the city, as is a forward-thinking budget that is fair to hard-working council taxpayers, and that is why I move this amendment today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to second Councillor Moore's amendment. It would be nice if the support it, but I'm sure they won't do. I listened very closely to Councillor Rankins' speech, and where I kind of from the politics that he's from, I probably would have thought it was very, very good. And I certainly have some sympathy in some respects, particularly when it comes to the question of business rates. I have made my frustrations on the lack of certainty clear to a Member of Parliament, and I have other comments as well to our Members of Parliament. I think it would be a lot easier for us all. It would be a lot easier for us all if we had a better idea of what will be coming with the business rates. But anyway, Mr. Mayor, Labour got it right in the analysis, or one of the analyses, of what went wrong with the election campaign, but they concluded they weren't trusted with the economy. The truth is that they weren't with good cause. We can argue about the significance of the banks in the financial crisis, but it was compounded by the simple fact that the public sector spending too much and had to stop. For evidence, there was a note left by Liam Byrne and Labour's own manifesto last May. Savings simply have to be made nationally, and this continues. Unfortunately, with so many areas of protected, government spending protected, local government has to bear the brunt of those savings. Which is where we are today. And it reminds me of a saying, socialism always runs out of other people's money. Now, that's probably a hero of your party, that's probably Margaret Thatcher, I believe. But, Mr. Mayor, it doesn't take a genius to realise that this council has been heavily dependent on other people's money. Not unusual, that is part of the structure of system of government nationally. But it actually does focus our attention that what we spend is other people's money, locally and nationally. But with this goes the need, the reliance to ensure that money is well and wisely spent. And this should be at the heart of this council's priorities. And it's certainly the heart of your city, and I endorse entirely the comments made by Leader about your city. We are four square behind you in all the aspirations for the city centre. We believe that a vital and prosperous and growing Preston is what we all want, so you have our total support. But it should also be embedded in fairness for you and your council. Now, I mentioned before about the business rates, and would that we had some indication of what the future holds on that. But we have to plan for the worst. And I think on this side, we endorse what we're doing is to have a budget in October, and certainly we agree with the need for that. The contents will be for them. But there must be no sacred cows. Several years ago, when we controlled the council, we had our best plan exercise. We looked at everything we did, and we concluded that, by and large, we were efficient. Now, I was chairman of audit when we got an extremely good audit report. And despite all the major changes in the council's management, nothing has changed in that respect. we are still a well-run authority. Excuse me, I'm very cold. I don't want the sympathy for it, but I'm very heavily cold. I miss North on Tuesday night. But we must be asking different questions today, and at least for the next 4 years. We, as a council, and as 57 councillors, must not only question the need for each service we provide, but, more importantly, we should be asking if there are better ways to actually provide each service. We owe to those who rely on our services as well as to those who fund them. Mr Mayor, I attended a cabinet meeting a couple of months ago. Peter was off in foreign parts, chaired by Councillor Swindles. But I was really heartened by the comments of both Councillor Swindles and Councillor Rawlinson. Councillor Rawlinson said that local government is changing, but he also said that we need to look at different ways of carrying out our functions. He's absolutely right. But it's important that we all recognise that and look at what we do and how. What Councillor Swindles said was even more important. Red lines will need to be rubbed out. But it really is a bit late in the day to claim that red lines need to be rubbed out. As an example, with hindsight, I would hope that Labour will now admit that they will be advised to undertake the true replace land exchange, given our financial position is simply unaffordable. Now, I suspect that the Labour group were expecting a white knight to save the day last May, but he was irresponsible. Indeed, Miliband and Co couldn't and wouldn't have turned the funding taps on, and, let's be honest, 80 or even 90% of Labour MPs still wouldn't turn the taps on. They may be a bit worried about their future, some of them, so I suspect they'll be a bit more muted in how they go and claim that. But nevertheless, the majority of Labour MPs recognise there is a real need for further savings. We should by now be on the way to 4-year elections and fewer councillors. We're going to have the same that Councillor Moore mentioned already in the bank. We should by now know what savings are possible with changes to how we deliver our services, even if we have put those changes on hold. The reason we are is that across the chamber and the constituency Labour Party and their paymasters. But we are now faced with lack of resources to do a fractional research that's necessary. And here I have to pay tribute from my side to the new management team. We think they've done an extremely good job. They've got in very quickly, and we are very grateful to them. But they'll never be faced with even bigger challenges in the next 6 months. Now, our alternative budget reflects all 3 of our corporate objectives. Your city goes without saying. Without investment, we can't have a growing, vibrant city. But furthest for you, we must cover all our constituents, and inherent in your council is the need for genuine value for the money. And this must be ensuring that whatever we do is taken as cost effective as possible. Now, we on this side will give you our support if you demonstrate that you really are prepared to rub out your red lines. You owe it to all the constituents of Preston, but particularly to those who do rely upon the services we offer. And we certainly do on our side value those services. We want to see the best services in Preston for those people. We will work with you to do our best to ensure that happens. But if you have your red lines and you turn your face against some changes, then you won't have our support. Mr Mayor, can I second Councillor Moore's resolution? Amendment.
Thank you. I just wanted to mainly reply to the proposal in the amendment not to charge the bidder. Beggars believe that somebody can be somebody responsible, as I given the scale of the cuts we've got, to take out potentially £500,000 out of our budget, wipes away the savings you propose for the first 2 years and major chunks for the following year. And that's before we start saying that these savings that are proposed are the most speculative nonsense I've ever come across anywhere. Well, let's look at the garden waste. Firstly, firstly, I mean, this is more to do with your winning your marginal seats. I understand that. I understand politics. It's not honest. It's not financially prudent. You're trying to buy votes in your wards. Let's look at this. Firstly, we're under no statutory obligation to collect garden waste. The garden waste scheme was only fully introduced in 2003 when we had a Labour leader, John Collins, introduced it. Prior to that, we didn't collect garden waste separately. We have to have major cuts to our funding. If we'd been in this situation in 2003, we couldn't introduce the scheme because it's funded from our government grants. It's not funded from council tax alone. If government grants get to disappear, we have no choice to charge for this service, and it is a service. The provision is not universal in Preston. People without gardens don't pay, they don't have brown bins. What you're asking is for them to subsidise people with gardens. Like myself, if I got a garden, I would be paying for a brown bin. The wards with terraced houses, like I represent, lots of terraced houses, have to subsidise wards in suburban and rural parts of Preston. That's grossly unfair given the financial climate that we're in. This council has a choice. It's not a choice between not charging or charging. It's a choice between having the service and people paying for it or not having the service. If we don't charge for it, we withdraw the service. That's the alternative. We're giving people a choice to pay or to not have the service. Just like they have a choice when they go to the leisure centres and they can decide to choose to go to the leisure centre or not go to the leisure centre. That's not a tax, it's a choice. This is about giving people a choice to pay, because the underlying cause is the fact that your government has cut our grants by vast amounts of money. If you want to have this service carrying on free, then you should be talking to your MPs.
Councillor Stephen
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel like it's kind of clashing with me. We've been told, I think Council's budget is very good budget and it's very good. I think it's right up to mention about the green bins. I mean, I thought it was one city around
don't have green waste.
green waste.
Got green waste and road. You also got that right, Mr. Mayor. No disrespect. I know it's his birthday.
We'll all agree on that. So, I thought this was also from community fairness for all. But it seems that when we said, the leader said we're going to charge 1.99% increase in council tax, that isn't the case for everybody. Because as Council Law says, the charge for green bins will put the council tax on 12.0.
Well, that's their choice. That's their choice. It's Thatcherism. They choose.
So the point is now, if we have a street, that, let's say we've got a little lane with 10 people in it, and half of them decide not to bother with the green bin, we've got to admission charges for actually collecting 5 of those bins and not the other 5. It just doesn't make sense. Either collect them all, or actually, why not do the morally correct thing and say, we are thinking of hiking the council tax or let's have a referendum about it. Let's do that. It seems to me to be a tale of two cities, not the one city, one community in here. And I think we need to seriously look at this in the next budget. This is for people who have gardens, a real lifesaver for them. In fact, smaller gardens especially. I mean, my garden, I just dump the grass in the corner, the paddock at the back, it doesn't make any difference to me. But a lot of residents who I represented in Greyfriars, some of the ones in the rural, this is, in reality, a rise in council tax. It's not too bad about it. We can all do the Bill Clinton thing. I never had sex with this woman. He perfectly said that. But actually, morally, it was totally outvoted. And this is what this principle of if you want something extra, you pay for it. And Damien mentioned the wire, what's happening in wire, they put their waste collection out to, they've privatised their waste collection. They previously had a very inefficient collaboration with Pilot, which just apparently didn't work. And they've made, as a result, quite a lot of savings as a result. What he did mention is that wire is asking its guardians to pay a charge for collecting their waste. So, wow. So there you go. Just to one or two other things. I mean, we will be looking at all possibilities for savings, absolutely. But rather than run at things the way you've done, we will be looking on examining things very carefully over the next few months to see where we can make those savings. And privately, I'm sympathetic to your idea of thirds. I know Neil's predecessor was extremely much in favour of that. Again, that is something that we will be looking at. In terms of reducing the cabinet by one place, I think over the next few months the cabinet, we need, it is actually a decision of the council leader. If I'm still the leader in May, I would want the same number in the cabinet, because we've got a huge job over the next few months. It could well be after next May, when we're dealing with a smaller service, a smaller council, we will have fewer members in the cabinet. But this next year, believe me, we need all hands to the pump. The cabinet's going to be working extremely hard to try and dig our way out of this very big problem we have. As far as your Harris, your idea of raising money through the Harris charges at the Harris Museum, well, that's going to help, isn't it? I suppose if you save the pennies, they all add up, don't they? So, yes, very happy to look at that one to see if we can raise more money through the Harris Museum. But that seems to be about it, really, isn't it? What else is it? I think I've covered everything. Neil talks about spending other people's money. Well, yeah, that's the whole principle of public services. People pay into through income tax and through council tax, and they get a service back. That's. I don't see the issue there. We believe we are a very responsive council, and we're very conscious that it's not. Well, it is our money, it's part of our money, because we all pay council tax. And your comments about different ways to carry out functions, yes, absolutely. We are examining everything. As I said in my speech, we're really looking very, very carefully at different options of how we can continue to carry out services. I've just written down Stephen Thompson's comment, morally out of order with regard to collecting green waste. I mean, talk about hyperbole. I mean, I think morally out of order is, I would suggest, the way this government has treated northern authorities. In comparison to, throwing large sums of money at county councils in the south of England. That was what I would define as out of order, Steve. Just get your priorities right again. Sorry, I'm not supporting the amendment.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much. There are various reasons that have been postulated and thought about why it was that the opinion poll suggested that there would be a whole Parliament, and that in fact it wasn't one in the event. I I did hear 2 months, I think, before the election, I was one evening listening to Question Time, and the editor of the New Statesman sort of suggested that it wasn't a done deal, that it might be an overall Tory majority. I must admit I didn't want to hear him, and I didn't agree at the time. He turned out to be absolutely right, as we know. And the reasons for that, it seems we're told that these professional opinion polls asked too many younger people in the numbers who said that they would vote Labour and in fact didn't vote at all. And that they didn't ask enough older people who said they would vote Tory and in fact did, which is of course the case, because older people are more inclined to vote than younger people are. We do know that already. Another factor seemed to be the fact that people in England were scared that they'd end up in a position where the SNP would be propping up a Miliband. I frankly wouldn't have objected to that at all in a parliament where we were the largest party. But it didn't. That was another reason I can't think why more people voted Conservative, because they didn't want to be in a scenario where Nicola Sturgeon would be propping up a Miliband. Well, he did raise these points, you see. Yes, of course I'm speaking on it. Yes, he did. He talked about why there was an overall Tory government. So I've only answered those points that he's raised. Okay. What I think people didn't vote for, and you look at it up and down the country and see it, was the destruction of local government. That people didn't vote for. Nor did people here vote for an idea where southern authorities, as my leader has made mention of, have a better deal, a far better deal, than northern authorities did. Northern authorities are more likely to be Labour. Yeah, but a facade, as has been said earlier, of the Prime Minister and other people writing in protest about the destruction of public libraries. I'm hoping that in this authority, I don't know, but I'm hoping, and in other northern authorities, that we'll end up in a scenario where the branch libraries in the poorer areas remain, and the richer ones, where they've already got some of the benefits they need, they can come and visit the poorer ones if they want to, and if they don't want to, they can run them as volunteers, which seems to be the thing that the government is pushing all the way. So let's not have too many complaints on things of that sort, shall we? The Forest of Bowland, you know, our area of outstanding natural beauty, expected to have its budget wholesale. Their budget has gone up. The budget for the Forest of Bowland has gone up. While local authorities...
Stop it.
Their budget has gone up, madam. Well, ours have not. Well, they were astonished. I go there from this authority, they were astonished. Yes. I'll tell you honestly. As for the idea of having 4-year elections, well, you know, you're not as well, in any group you're in, you're not as in touch with your electorate if you're having elections every 4 years than what you are if you have them every year. That's the first point. It makes you get out. I'm not suggesting you wouldn't be keen, I know very well that you were born. It pushes people to go out and to work harder because they've got a goal each year to go to. So that's the first thing I say. The second I say, that when the Boundary Commission here then eventually decide what the size of the wards are going to be, I know the Liberals have been hammering at this one for a long time. I once said to a Liberal, well, you're not going to gain very much from it, Madam Mayor, because they won't get any many more seats anyway. That Liberal said, no, but we won't have to look at you lot quite so readily, will we? There won't be as many of you lot to look at, which really wasn't the sort of response I would have hoped. I suppose it shows the mentality of some people in that party, that they should come back with a crack like that. At the end of the day, regarding the number of councillors, it's a pittance in a saying, given the amount of money that the government is cutting, and Councillor Rawlinson has said that to me. And the same goes for the number of elections there be. And, you know, if we do go into a scenario where we've got more so-called professional councillors, there will, of course, be a greater charge of allowances for those members. That's an inevitability. People don't think of that now, but, you know, when it comes, it can be a done deal. Yeah, just remember what I've said, all of you. If this ever comes to be, it'll be done and dusted by them, and those involved will be in the long grass like the rest of it. But that fact has to be remembered, that the savings are not that big, and the destruction of democracy is not the answer. to the scenario we're in at the moment. A fairer system is what we need. Until we have that, there'll be continual gripes about where we're at. Thank you for listening to me, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Master. I'll admit it. I was going to just have a go at them. It's nothing to do with our I was just going to lay it down. Mine isn't. We'd like to carry on, please, Councillor. But I'm not talking on our amendment. I was just having...
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry I was a bit late, but I had another meeting to be at, but I did catch the leader's speech, and I did catch the opposition amendments. I just want to take a couple of comments. On the question of turning the taps on, in the 6th year of Tory cuts to local government, Tory politicians have suddenly realised it's beginning to affect their communities. So they managed to find up £300 million to look after the Tory shires in the south. They are going to shift the funding for schools, to shift it to more affluent areas, and many members in this chamber have seen issues around the Home Office and change it to police funding to move it away from urban areas towards rural areas. That is a sign that Tory politicians are seeing austerity beginning to hit the people they represent, and therefore, rather than doing anything to stop the cuts, they simply want to make sure those cuts cut deeper in more deprived areas in order to protect their areas. And what we have seen today, in terms of the Tory amendment, is an illustration of that with spades on, and ties in with what we've seen at the County Council. If we're looking ahead at the sort of cuts that we are going to have to make as a council, and looking at discretionary spend, the areas we're going to have to look at are the main parks and leisure services. And if we have a choice between charging for green waste, which will bring in £500,000, and making cuts in that area, where would the people of Preston expect us to make those savings? I would have thought it was fairly obvious in terms of people's vision and sense of community. But also what we've seen in this amendment is a short-term issue. Because we can jiggle the figures around, use a bit of reserves, and avoid charging for green waste. But if we did that today, in a couple of years' time, the financial reality of the council is we would have to come back to it. And if you want to manage the budget of authority, look in the long term, look at the direction of travel, and if the budget is being cut year after year after year, make the cuts early, get them sorted, rather than keep putting them off and putting them off. And this, again, is a classic example of doing that. The other thing I'd make a point about is don't bank savings unless you're sure you've got it. 300,000 savings from the privatisation of the waste collection has been plucked out of the air. I've seen no documentation to say where that figure's come from, whether that's got any support from officers or from anybody else. I know if I was in the cabinet here and this issue came up, you'd want proper advice that the 300,000 is the realistic figure, and you'll then be cautious how much of that you put in your budget. I understand the Conservatives have some difficulty in opposition putting the budget together, and opposition do tend to put a figure in and say, I'm sure we can find the savings. But this serious about this, I just think the amendment of Conservatives fails on so many levels that I'm sure members in this chamber will vote against it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, speaking on the amendment, Stafford, I'm delighted that the Conservatives in their yearly pilgrimage to the idea of 4-year elections. However, as I remember, not a single Tory, whatever it was actually, when we voted the motion vote in favour of it.
They know better.
Well, but the point is that it's not going to happen in the council. That's why I wrote to the boundary commission this week.
Yes,
And the point is, your figures are wrong as well. You wouldn't cut councils down to 40. The idea when we first came up with it was that would match the county boundaries. So actually you'd cut the number of ward time, because the county boundaries are shrinking from 10 to 9. You would have 2 city wards per county division, each with 2 members each, meaning you'd have 38 councillors. That's what you should be doing. So this doesn't really work. And the other things, the main problem I have with this actually is it doesn't deal with the main problem. And because you talk about the Harris Museum getting £12,000, that still means the Harris Museum is losing £848,000 a year. But I mean, I'm very grateful Peter Rankin mentioned me in his speech. And actually, Peter, because I keep all my speeches, which is always useful just in case someone wants to misquote it. So this is exactly what I said regarding the Guildhall. This is from 2012. It said, after the Guild celebrations, we say to everyone who will listen, make us an offer for the Guildhall. Think about the massive difference a new conference centre would have for the city. But you need to be prepared in the current climate that we might not be able to sell it, and so at the end of the next financial year, you have to consider it might have to be mothballed. That is actually what I said. And also, here is, and in the end, I was right, because someone came in and bought it. But you delayed and wasted more money at the time. Because, just like in 2012, when I came out and said we couldn't afford the bus station, you delayed that decision until October to avoid an electoral bashing in May. Now, there's a strange similarity here with what's going on with these ones. Delay the decision till October, as you were at the furthest possible point from the next city council elections. And I think somebody else has said in 2012, because actually, Councillor Borrow is completely right when he said you need long-term planning in order to make these sorts of savings. That's exactly what we said in 2012, because here's what I said. The worst decision you could make is to put off the big choices that have to be made. You'll have no money, no reserves, no time, and no options. There will be cuts to staff, building and services beyond imagination. I said that in 2012, and now you're talking about we have to come up with ideas in a few months. You should have been thinking about this 4 years ago, because I have a lot of time for Matthew Brown. I actually have a lot of time and a lot of respect for him. But I remember him standing in this hall and saying, don't worry, we'll have an Ed Miliband government to save the debt. You said that, you actually said it. And what we said to you repeatedly over the years is, fine, have dreams of this sort of thing, but hope for the future, but you've got to plan for the worst. You really had to plan for the worst. And what we said is now becoming true, but you never did plan for the worst. And the problem is where we get to now. And if we're brutally honest, and I read Mine's article on Preston actually, which was very honest, and I recommend all of you to read it, that second-tier authorities, like Preston City Council, are coming to an end. That's the ugly truth of it. There is, and you look at the files, there is very little room for optimism. And what this is, actually, is centralisation. But not in the way that we normally expect centralisation of local services, and the fact that we'll take services away from you, because then you have a very big outcry that you've taken, say, planning or whatever else away from local councils. They're doing it in a much more insidious way. What George Osborne did in the autumn statement was make it virtually impossible for second-tier authorities like this one to survive. It is centralisation through that scheme. And many could argue that what is the point of a local council if what they are left to do is solely administer things they have to do by law. We also have to accept the fact that we are going to have to either sell off or shut the House Museum and Rescue Leisure Centre. You look at these figures, they do not lie. Again, I was very open about it in 2012 and I said we could not afford the bus station, we could not afford the Guildhall. Look at these figures. And the problem is that, the parts of it, Avon Park, where I proposed to Becky those years ago, that, all our parks are at risk here as well. Michael did it in 2012, but no one did it. So, the problem is, winding down these reserves and our budgets so that in the end this council will go into special measures. A government administrator, for lack of a better word, will come in and he will make those cuts. So you can blame him. No, that is if you don't want the job, then you should stand aside.
That's it. Silence, indeed.
I'll finish as I started because ultimately I can't support the Conservative amendment because it's worse than St George. And by the end of this year, actually, where I agree with Councillor Brown is that a new Central Lancashire Unitary Authority elected on proportional representation is the future for this council because this one, unfortunately, is running out of time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the budget proposal, as the Labour group have set it out, is an indication of not a lack of joined-up thinking.
No.
The administrations at Lancashire County Council and Preston City Council decide that they will continue to collect from red bins, yellow bins, but they will cease collection from brown bins. Right, okay, I'm on. However, should it be the case that they do cease to collect, what are we going to do with it? Oh, hang on. No, we've just had a good thought in Preston. We'll charge them £30 for it. What are you going to do with the content? Because the people at the recycling centres are not working there anymore. People are going to be able to opt out, you say. Great idea. Don't have to pay 30 quid. I'll do with it something else. Who's going to administer it? How much is it going to administer it? The likely result for this, I feel, could be more people burning garden waste in their gardens, as they're quite entitled to. Would that create more complaints about smoke, carbon into the air, carbon dioxide? Is that your intention? I don't think you thought that one through completely. You know, Peter, people have a choice. They can have a light or they can have a compost heap. I'm sure they will. However, this item is indicative of the thinking of the Labour group, and for that, and the proposals it fits to their budget. I'm sorry. The thinking about offset your cuts.
Neil, Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. But yeah, I've got to say, for the first time I'm listening to the leader talking about the budget. I found myself in agreement with a lot of what he was saying. A lot of what the Conservative government has done is immoral in many ways, and it hurts Preston, it hurts many areas across the north, much more than it does the much more affluent areas down south. It's not fair, it's not right. But we do have to consider the fact that this isn't new, this isn't sudden, this hasn't come out of the blue. There have been warnings for the last 4 or 5 years where we've known that this is coming along. Councillor Burrow mentioned himself, you can see the direction of travel. Why is it that we've got to this position when the warning signs have been there, and yet we've not been taking decisions quickly enough to be able to try and save us some money and ultimately some of the services. I mean, can you guarantee that the Harris Museum is still going to be there and available to the public in 5 years' time? Westview Leisure Centre the same, Fulwood Leisure Centre. We all know that the answer is no. You can't guarantee that because we've not been looking after the budget. Or perhaps more accurately, that side of the council hasn't been looking after the budget. And it's not good enough. The people of Preston deserve more than that. Why is it, over the last 5 years, that time and time again, the Labour Party has refused to take the difficult decisions? It's political cowardice. And to quote Robert earlier, it's not honest and it's not financially prudent. I won't be supporting the Conservative motion because it doesn't do enough to deal with the overall problems. I certainly cannot support the Labour motion. Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A few points, please. I certainly support the amendment, obviously. A number of things have been mentioned in the chamber this afternoon. One of them I know that isn't on the budget, but please allow me to mention them now, with buses, which have been spoken about. In my ward, we haven't had buses in parts of those wards for years. Indeed, Councillor Boswell mentioned fairness, that people who don't have brown bins are subsidising those who do have brown bins. Well, let me tell you that in the rural wards, the only luxury, if that's what it's brought down to now, that some of the residents have there, is a bin collection. We are going to end up, as a result of this, with the people who cannot afford to pay for the £30 per bin, they're going to have to get rid of that waste somewhere. Guess where they're going to put it? Probably in the rural wards. And this is false economy, because what will happen, because we've obviously got the Smarties, not the fudge on our side of the... You know that, don't you? Because you've been... is that the fly tipping that's going to take place is going to be unsightly, it's going to cause a horrible, horrible mess. The MP regularly runs articles on fly tipping and how much it costs the council to clear that waste. Well, guess what? When this fly tipping inevitably happens, there's going to be a cost to send the man out with his wagon to pick up the rubbish, which could have been done in the first place by picking up the waste. So, I think it's an excellent idea not to put the 30 pounds off. Thank you.
Well said.
Oh, Councillor Swindon.
Heard from both sides opposite now about reducing councillors and reducing forming elections. The county boundaries are, we should be hearing shortly where they're going to end up, and as night follows day, the Boundaries Commission will be coming into Preston. They're already due. John Potter's invited them to something they're going to do anyway. It's a bit late. They're on the way. They will be here and there will be, and they will make recommendations on numbers of councillors. And if we looked at Lancaster, they ended up with more councillors. If you look at South London, they ended up with 2 less. So they're plucking numbers out there, 40, 38. There will be all recommendations made with the Boundary Commission that will decide the number of councillors probably that we've got or not got. And there's no illusion that the ward I represent will change drastically or vanish altogether when the Boundaries Commission comes. That is partly due to the way that the government has changed to individual voter registration, because you only have to look at the halls of residence in my ward, and it was pages of people that had signed up, that were signed up to be voters in university ward. You look at the same pages now, there are 2 or 3. 2, 3, 4, maybe 20 in a block of accommodation. They're disenfranchised young people that will not get to vote at all, and deliberately so. That's been a deliberate.
Yes.
That's been a deliberate sense of that. So to invite the Boundaries Commission to come in to do what they were coming anyway, and this seems way beyond that, and to actually stand. And the other issue, obviously, is brown bins, where people in the terrace streets of University Ward don't have a brown bin. They're subsidising the wards that do have a brown bin. I can't see how that can be justified at all. When cuts are being made at this scale, that they want to keep brown bins for their wards, where I have a brown bin, I have a garden, and I do use it on occasions, but not all the time. There are many of the council estates of Preston have large gardens that will use them all the time. It's a charge that we don't want to make. It's a charge that we don't have to do. It's great. Whatever. And the other point that Neil made about red lines, well, we've heard a very eloquent speech on 4-year elections or whatever. There are no red lines in the Labour group. It may well come back. It may end up a red line again, but there are no red lines, John.
I just watched over the last hour how we debated about the 30 towers on the actual bin collection. Isn't the more important debate out there for our people is why is it a systematic attack? We have an increased childhood poverty rate in this country in the last 5 years. We have seen 1,200 residents in Preston directly impacted by the bedroom tax. We have seen a number of initiatives that this government, your government that you represent out there that have routinely attacked this city. What's important to our people in this city is what's happening, the government policies that you are forcing local councillors to put on, which have no sound financial basis. It's ideological, and as my nan said to me, because it seems to be the season of comments, but you now remember, Conservatives will always conserve, but they only conserve for a minority.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make a couple of quick observations. First of all, I want to say thank you to Councillor John Potter and Councillor Neil Garvey for their eloquent speech. They couldn't be bothered to do a budget though, so it's not shown on all, guys. And then, the Lancashire County Council, I'm told, have spent 6.6 million to bring in consultants. So does Councillor Borough really think he's the right person to be offering financial advice to Preston City Council? I think not.
James, Councillor.
Thank you for calling me by my first name, Mr. But there are just a few points that have come out through this debate. One of the things that I found quite amazing from Neil to say that the point of government is to deal with other money, with other people's money, he said. On the Prime Minister's letterbox, it has the title of First Lord of the Treasury. The point of government is to manage a common fund, the taxes of people, for the best for those people in any given situation. One of the most popular Thatcherite economists was called Milton Friedman. His famous phrase, that I'm sure he's familiar with it, was that there is no such thing as a free lunch. There's no such thing as a free bin collection either. And it will have to be paid for. Yes, it was introduced in 2003 when the Labour Party were in control of this council. But the 2003 were much different days than those that we are facing at the moment. The Liberals, unfortunately, they speak very eruditely, but quite often just state the really obvious. I mean, like anybody in 2012 could have said we're going to have difficulties with the Guildhall. And one of the things that the Liberals have always done incredibly well, and Christine Abrams can vouch for this when she they're always very astute, Mr. Mayor, in searching for a headline. And in saying that the Harris building is under threat, and to say that the Harris building is hemorrhaging money at £800,000 a year is rank nonsense. That building provides a service that is paid for through people's council tax, and one that is outstandingly popular for the people of this town. And it isn't a business or a corner shop that's losing money, it's something that's a service that is provided for the good of the people of this town. It would be outrageous, and I'm sure everyone in this chamber agrees, it would be outrageous to predict, as anyone might, that that's going to be something that we would have to sell in the future. If this government in Westminster continues to make the outrageous and immoral cuts that it is doing, whilst it's giving money to the home counties, then that may be a possibility that we'll have to face. But as far as I am concerned, every member of this chamber will fight tooth and nail to preserve what is a jewel in the crown of the town. And there's nothing to be gained by trying to look for a headline and something that's exciting to the media. The cost of paying for a green bin service is immoral. Sorry, brown bin. I take one now. I apologise. Brown bin. Paying for the brown bins, in the position that we are at the moment, it would be immoral to say that we cannot carry on doing that. And it's not a free service. It is something that has to be weighed in the balance. And as has been stated before, it is essentially a benefit that is given to those people who can afford to have nice leafy gardens in the suburbs. And it is paid for, Mr. Mayor, by those people who cannot afford to live in the leafy green suburbs. But as several of the members from the Conservative side of this chamber said, they are thinking quite clearly and quite straightforwardly about those people who I represent. And that's perfectly obvious. Not only is it perfectly obvious, Mr. Mayor, it is irresponsible, and I would even go so far as to say that it is immoral. I urge everyone in this chamber to oppose this amendment, because the amendment, Mr. Mayor, is not only irresponsible, it is immoral.
Things to come. My word, John.
Thank you, Mr. Yeah, there's all the talk about retail policy in the process, and I totally agree with that. But this kind of like thing about reducing the council support and all the rest of it, we'll have less politicians. It's totally an illusion compared to the amount of cuts that we need to make. Because if you have to save £3 million every year, it really is a scratch on the surface. And we need to keep on knocking on doors, and the problems are increasing. And the problems are increasing because of austerity. Increasing all the time, because it's not just local government that's getting cut back, it's central government, it's the voluntary sector. You see people who have disabled people, for example, in their families, they're having more and more problems. So councils are actually doing a lot more now, and the reason they're doing a lot more is because we're facing this climate of austerity. Now, if we go back to the Conservative budget, I mean, stuff in it's like privatising the refuse collection. They're actually coming out with an ideologically preconceived solution without looking at the other options. And it seems a little unfair towards staff that you're saying that's what you're going to do, when there could be other options.
and that's not right what you need to happen. We talk about privatisation. Privatisation often costs more because a lot of these companies tend to have to get bailed out by the public sector. They deliver a very bad service. On top of that, the quality of service goes down as well because terms and conditions of staff go down, also there are lots of stringent targets or the rest of it. So the actual quality of the service goes down. It's very difficult because you lose that democratic accountability. Instead of people you vote for running the business, you have unelected shareholders who don't live in this community running the business. But what I want to say also is, this is part of a much wider agenda of austerity. We've talked about that. That's what's causing all this. We've had all the banking crisis, and this is what called austerity in the first place. £5,000 per family in 2008 was used to bail out banks, and this is why our communities are getting decimated. This is what caused it, and we need to be very careful as politicians, because people are only going to take so much of this. They're only going to take so much of allowing, billionaires to get away with avoiding the taxes, huge corporations get away with avoiding the taxes, while local companies have to pay the full taxes, benefit cuts, wage freezes, all the rest of it, public services being decimated. And you see the response to this. In America, you see the various salaries on the increase, you see the response in Spain, you see the response in Greece, you see the response to this country, and people will wake up to the fact that this is just a totally politically driven choice. We don't have to have this austerity at all. There's enough wealth in this economy. It's just not distributed in the right way. It's not under control of it. And this is totally a politically driven choice. Question also, is a lot of this austerity lawful? Because the Conservative government followed Labour and signed up to the public sector equality duty. These cuts are going to hit ethnic minorities more, they're going to hit disabled people more. The government are losing legal challenge after legal challenge on the bedroom tax. Is this lawful? And if there's a possibility of a legal challenge, will the Conservative group join us within that if that's something that this council chose to do through the LGA, whatever? That's a final thing. And just finally, on top of that, I just believe that yourselves as Conservative councils, you're very important in this because you speak to Conservative government ministers. They're the only people who can actually change all this. So as Peter said earlier, you've got to really lobby hard and put politics aside for the Conservative city. Really lobby hard to make sure that the ministers, whether it's George Osborne, Treasury ministers or whatever, don't hit us as much as we're being hit because this council is going to stop being the council it's been for so long, and we're going to get to a situation where local democracy is dying, as John Brown said, and we don't have the resources of Paris to make any political choice. You've really got to put politics aside and try to make sure that the brutality that's being imposed from your government isn't as brutal as it can be. And that's all I have to say. We've all got to lobby the people we can influence to make sure that over the next few years we can save as much as we can from this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Pauline Brown now.
For a moment I thought we were going to have a coalition between the Tories and the Labour Party and figure out some budget that got produced. Never mind. Today just reminds me very much of the Northern Lights. Today reminds me very much of the life I've been over the household budget. She's complaining, it's not giving her enough money, he's complaining that she's spending too much money. And at the end of the day, the only people who suffer in that are kids, your parents, which I'm classed as our residents who your parents.
Councillor Grant, is it possible for you to speak up? Or leave it towards your microphone?
I'm not used to shouting. Only at all. What really worries me is the dangers we're in at Preston. We're in dangerous for the Gothic It worries me about the parks, because the parks, which are the pride of Preston, will probably end up, if we can't afford to run them, they're like go back to Wasteland, where someone will take them over and then use them to develop housing. And I can't see that. It worries me about the Harris. It worries me about whether we can afford to keep the Harris. It worries me about keeping the leisure centres. Because let's face it, the leisure centres are there for the health and well-being of Preston. Local government has already diminished significantly over the last 4 years. We've trimmed and trimmed and trimmed, so there's nothing else left to trim. I mean, in a couple of years, we faced devastating problems with Preston City Council and Lancashire County Council. As we've already heard today, other areas have millions put into the budgets, but the north, where we need it most, is again doing without. And the MPs, county councillors, who did not make representation to central government at the next again. Why have we let ourselves get to the stage of perhaps going into special measures? We've put our own staff to the bone. We have officers who are overworked. And we are ceasing to become an effective council by doing this. We need to move away from the two-tier authority, set up a central Lancashire unitary authority elected by proportional representation. And I'd hate to use the phrase, be afraid, be very afraid. But that's a phrase that keeps coming into my mind about this council at the moment. We need to take drastic measures on what we do.
Thank you. Councillor Roy Lincoln next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I must say I hadn't intended to speak in this debate today because, to be honest, I've been quite demoralised and depressed by the financial situation facing us. But I have expected this to be quite depressing but short meeting. I'm sure, like everybody else, I didn't come into politics in order to be cut in, and I believed that it was our role to try and make things better. My view is that we're just constantly going to say that the weakest people in our society are going to burden to a large extent of the failure of our local Tory councillors and MPs in standing up and fighting for the whole constituents of Preston. It's not that many council meetings ago where on a different issue I felt I had to stand up and say that it is time for some of the people on that side to start saying, not in my name. They've got to say, they've got to start putting the people of Preston before their party's political position. I think there's been some quite hypocritical comments today that I find really shocking. The issue of the brownfields, 2-3 months ago, the Council of Boswell kind of came to overview and scrutiny, went through the whole rationale behind the decision, the possible outcome that we were finding, and described to overview and scrutiny the reasons why this was likely to be included in this budget. The Conservative group were quite happy to accept the reasons behind that decision, and the meeting finished quite amicably. Now we find a couple of months later that we're going to use it to make cheap political points, because other than that they would have nothing to say. So the comment today, when we're talking about the situation that's facing this authority, for them to force us to be looking for £500,000 of additional savings elsewhere, just to make up for them scoring cheap points so they can say, look what we've done. I find that quite annoying. The comments that they've been making about other people's money, the government being prudent, the government looking after its money. It isn't the government's money. It's not that long ago. It's not that long ago that when we talked about public expenditure in Preston, it was accepted that around 65% of the money that we spend came from the income tax that we pay. About a third of the money that we spend came from whatever we called it, rates, poll tax, council tax. But that was how we funded the services that we gave to the people of Preston. What we're saying now is that because we've got a government that decides the priorities are cutting tax for millionaires and avoiding upsetting big business and multinationals, and we don't want to collect what's due from that part of the economy, the reason that leaves us with the fact that we will punish the weakest people in society. I think the comment from the Liberals about us refusing to take difficult decisions. What do you think we've been doing for the last 4 years? Look at the staff we've sacked, look at the services that we're not providing. Look at what we're doing now look at what we're not doing now that we were doing 4 years ago. The idea that we've been doing nothing for years, we've been cutting and cutting and cutting. The reason why we're faced with an emergency budget is that the prudent work from the Cabinet, where they cut to cope with the worst case scenario, where we were expecting to be coming to this budget saying that as a result of the cuts that we've imposed over the last few years, we're not in a good position, but at least we're solvent. And the actual settlement that we were offered is even worse than our worst case scenario. That's why we're going for an emergency budget. It's not being afraid of the lecture, because I'm damn sure that when I talk to lecturer, I've got a message that I'm quite proud to stand up for. I'm not going to be ashamed of saying what the reason, the rationale behind these cuts for. And I don't think there's anybody on this side of the chamber has anything to be embarrassed about. And what we're saying is that we should all be in this together. And some of you should be saying to your government that why are they protecting the Tory shires down south, who have obviously got the ear of Camden, and they are ignoring you. So why don't you come and join us in actually putting the blame where it lies?
The reason that we're having a budget in October is because of the settlement we got on the week before Christmas. Which, if you look at the budget position that we've got now, in front of either the Labour budget or the Tory budget, if you look at the 2019 figure, we've got an expenditure of 23 million and an income of 19 million. We're taking 3.751 million out of reserves, and we've still got to find another 3 million on top of that. That's why this council is getting very close to the position that we will be bankrupt by then. We won't go bankrupt because we're not allowed to. DCLG will send commissioners in. But there's very little that those commissioners are going to be able to find to cut, because before then, maybe 2017, 18, 19, we will be down to the legal minimum. That's all we'll be able to afford. Green waste is not a legal requirement. 2017-18, we either stop doing it or we start charging for it. So we might as well start charging now and get the boot in first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Real world, man.
Yeah. When Christine's talking about things getting looking blacker, we're talking the parks, the other Christine. Pauline, sorry. Sorry, I've already known you for 10 years. When we're talking about the parks aren't a legal requirement. If we don't maintain the parks, they will turn to wasteland. Or else they'll turn on the building sites and we'll put houses up on them. But that's what this council is looking at facing. And you're telling us, save 300,000 quid, spend 3,000 quid picking up green waste. That's just not all. Leisure centres, they're not requirements. They will almost certainly go. Street cleaning, that's not a legal requirement. That will have to go. This is the future. Thank you.
Councillor Moore. Essentially, it's not about a rookie effort.
So you did not.
There are probably some savings in here that we will have to consider at some point. There's no doubt about it. I mean, they're not in our budget proposal because, as people said, the settlement was much worse than expected. We used the local government association figures that lots of councils used. They were our figures. There were predictions by the local government association, and yet the grant settlement was much, much worse. So how you can predict these things, I don't know. Councillor Potter must have a crystal ball. It must be psychic. But I don't know. Yeah, there's certainly some things in there that we'll be considering going forward. We don't have the exact figures yet, because we've got figures for all sorts of things that we've looked at previously that we don't want to do. Of course we don't want to do them, but we've got figures and we'll be fine-tuning them and we'll be looking at them again as we go forward. Putting 12 grand in from the Harris when there's a full review going on right now, reimagining the whole project. We need to wait and see what's going on there. Councillor Potter just says it loses money. That's it. You know, Preston's premier cultural icon is just a plus and a minus on balance sheets. Councillor Potter is. You know, Councillor Darby said, "Can you guarantee that Harris will be there in 5 years?" Of course we can't. But if we listen to Liberal Democrats, I can guarantee that it'll be in private hands next year and nobody will be able to go for it, except wealthy people. We will do everything we can to keep this open for everyone in Preston. They just want to sell it tomorrow and balance the books. We're not ashamed of wanting to try and save it. Absolutely not. As has been said, you know, the Guildhall would have been boarded up long before we found a solution for it. And we waited just the right amount of time. We looked at all the options, and someone came in and they saved the Guildhall because we looked at all the options. Instead of just boarding it up, it would have been sat there empty, would have left. Instead of the city centre derelict. That was an amazing solution. It was a stroke of luck to a point that somebody like Simon really wanted to come and do that and pour money into it and turn it into what it is now. It's fantastic. And the bus station would have been rubble with no replacement if we had listened to the Liberal Democrats. So we found two amazing solutions to Preston's biggest assets that are so valuable to the people out there. And we're quite proud of that. And of course we're waiting until October because, you know, the settlement was so late. It was unexpected, and the Liberal Democrats have got nothing forward, nothing. I was quite pleased about Neil's speech. He just basically reiterated the fact that he supports the cuts, so that backs up what we are saying. Councillor Seddon suggesting that the green waste charges will be counteracted. I'm quite sure that we can deal with the complaints about burning rubbish gardens for less than $500,000 a year. So hopefully it will save money. And I was quite impressed with Councillor Smith's optimism that we will be collecting fly tipping in rural areas in a few weeks' time. Good luck with that. The biggest hypocrisy in this amendment is just astounding, because Councillor Cartwright said there must be no red lines, no sacred cows in our budgets. They seem to have drawn one just in front of the brown bins. It's very strange. Thanks anyway.
Don't start on the way again. Right. Can we now please, if we're just going to vote, all in favour? What about the amendment? No, that's against.
I see, on the substantive ground.
Right? All against.
Yes, Mr. Bond. I assume now we dealt with the amendments. I only wanted to reply to several points that were made that were pertinent to me. The issue about the 6 million consultants, which refer to the county council, is a contract with Newtons, which for £6 million will deliver year after year revenue savings of £36 million. I'm sure Councillor Rawlinson will be happy for somebody to come along with a similar sort of offer. Preston, a reference was made, I think, by Councillor Seddon to what would happen to the green waste, given the decisions that are being made about the Thornton and Farrington plants. The green waste will be collected as normal, but because there will not be food in it, there will not be a requirement to compost it within the plants in the way it is now, and it can be composted at a third of the price by other companies that can do it. And the final point was Councillor Darby made some comments, I think Councillor Potter, about taking early decisions and rather than putting them off. I think there is a split in the Liberal Democrat group in Preston, because Councillor Winlow 2 weeks ago moved an amendment which spent £7 million from reserves, putting off difficult decisions. Councillor Potter here stands up without an amendment, but criticises the Labour group for not making difficult decisions. I'm somewhat puzzled.
Usual liberal nonsense.
Does anyone else want to? No, we'll go on to the recorded vote, please.
Recorded vote on the substantive report. So, Councillor Abrams.
Against.
Councillor Afric.
For.
Councillor Atkins. For. Councillor Bax. For. Councillor Borrow.
For.
Councillor Boswell.
For.
Councillor Matthew Brown.
For.
Councillor Courtney Brown.
Against.
Councillor John Brown.
For.
Councillor Neil Cartwright.
Against.
Councillor Roberta Cartwright.
Against.
Councillor Terry Cartwright. Councillor Collins.
For.
Councillor Corker.
For.
Councillor Coupland. Councillor Carl Crompton.
For.
Councillor Linda Crompton. Councillor Crowe.
For.
Councillor Darby.
Against.
Councillor Davies.
Against.
Councillor Desai.
For.
Councillor Dewist.
Against.
Councillor Eaves. Councillor Edmondson. Councillor Faruqi.
For.
Councillor Gildert. Councillor Greenash.
Against.
Councillor Hart.
Against.
Councillor Hammond.
Against.
Councillor Hull.
For.
Councillor Iqbal.
For.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Against.
Councillor Kelly.
For.
Councillor Leach. Councillor Leeming.
For.
Councillor McManus.
Against.
Councillor Moore.
Against.
Councillor Moss. 4. Councillor Mullen. Councillor Patel. Councillor Pomfret. 4. Councillor Potter.
Against.
Councillor Rankin.
4.
Councillor Rawlinson. 4. Councillor Rollo.
4.
Councillor Routledge. Councillor Saxena.
4.
Councillor Seddon.
Against.
Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Swindles.
4.
Councillor Thomas. Councillor Thompson.
Against.
Councillor Walker.
Against.
Councillor Britton.
Against.
Councillor Mark Yates.
4.
Councillor Rebecca Yates.
Groan there with Mullen is in the gallery and we're wondering why. If you've been paid your council tax, you can end up on a business like this.
Item 7 is a special emergency decision, however, there are no report. The date of the next meeting of council is Thursday, the 3rd of March 2015, at 2 p.m. in Town Hall.
All right.
The trouble.
Bloody hell.